This is Dusty Deevers on the left. We've got Joel Webbin and Doug Wilson. If you don't know who these guys are, they are Christian nationalist extremists. And Dusty Deevers on the left is a politician. He's a senator from Oklahoma, a state senator, I believe. And every opportunity he gets, he screams about gay people or his interest in banning adult entertainment, to put it mildly. He wants to ban it in all of its forms at any cost. And these people are absolutely insane, but it's fascinating to listen to what they have to say. So I want to see what they say to each other here in this talk. It's called Live Panel on Biblical Patriarchy and Christian Nationalism. They're advocates of biblical patriarchy and Christian nationalism. So let's give it a listen. And while we do, we're going to play some Pokemon Ultraviolet. It's a ROM hack of Fire Red, where I can catch every Pokemon, including Mew. So it shouldn't bother you too much. Just be in the background if you never played before. Oh, and this is not the first part. If you didn't see the others, don't sweat it. This stands independently of the rest. I'll give context if it's missing.
I've never been comfortable with the word complementarian, and I think it's because left-wing complementarians are basically egalitarians.
Complementarianism is a theological view. Oh, okay, it's a theological view. I guess I was the idiot. It's a theological view in some denominations of Christianity, Rabbinic Judaism, and Islam that men and women have different but complementary roles and responsibilities in marriage, family life, and religious leadership. Complementary and its cognates are currently used to denote this view. Okay. Anyway, interesting. I've never heard of that before, but okay.
And right-wing complementarians are patriarchal. So let's just call it what it is.
Great. And then not Pastor, but Senator Deevers. Your turn.
Yeah, Dusty Deevers. Absolutely insane. Let's listen to what he has to say, and I might play a clip or two from him.
Why not both?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
All right.
It's just everybody gets to be a pastor.
The Reverend
But none of us are cool enough to be senators. You're the only one, so you got to own that title.
Okay, yeah, that was a good save. These people are very clearly nervous sitting on stage in front of a bunch of people. Weirdly, because they're pastors. You wouldn't think.
But Pastor, Senator, Reverend, the great Dusty Deevers, please.
Keep going.
The most reverend pastor.
That was pretty good. I like that.
You know?
That was a really good save.
Now we're getting somewhere. So I didn't catch any of the Allie Beth Stuckey trad wife conversation because I was out legislating morality.
Did you hear what he just said? He was out legislating morality. The U.S. is not supposed to legislate morality. There's an underlying concept here that makes it so we don't have to legislate morality. Let me write this down. I got to get this clip later. There's an underlying concept that the U.S. government is supposed to take, or that you're supposed to take, as just an individual actor in the system. My right to swing my fist ends at the tip of your nose. You're allowed to swing your fist anywhere you want except for right here. That's not you exercising your rights anymore if you swing it at my nose. That's you violating my rights. So the U.S. has a set number of values and rights and ideals, many of which are laid out in the Constitution. The right against unreasonable search and seizure, the right to freedom of speech, right to freedom of religion and freedom of the press, and so on and so forth. Oh, a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Wait, is that in the Constitution? Or is that the Declaration of Independence? I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is that, that was the Declaration of Independence. The point is that we have a certain number of rights laid out, and the government's job is to protect those rights. Make sure that everybody is being treated fairly and equally. By doing so, the Constitution protects degenerates. It protects everybody. You can live your life however you want, do whatever you want, as long as you're not affecting others. And as long as, to some degree, you're not affecting yourself too negatively, like drug use, for example. The underlying principle behind all of this is you should reach for absolutely no state interference in morality, ideally, outside of protecting specific rights that are listed. Quick interjection, this won't take long, I promise. I'd appreciate it if you watched to the end of the video, or at least a couple extra seconds, because YouTube bases its algorithm off of watch time. The more watch time a video has, the further the video will go. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I'm selling my book, Understanding Jehovah's Witnesses, 400 pages, and my second book, 100 Questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, which is about 80 pages. And you can find them both there on the website. Audio form, ebook form, whatever. It's about my experiences within the religion and the history of the religion generally. The 100 questions are intended to challenge a religious leader, so I'd appreciate it if you give it a read. Okay, back to the video. I don't think the Constitution or our state laws really sum up what human rights should be concisely. I prefer the UN Declaration of Human Rights. I think there are like 29 articles, 30 articles. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act toward one another in a spirit of brotherhood. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. You know, these are fantastic rights. I love the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And it's obviously much more modern than the U.S. Constitution. Anyway, the point is that Dusty Deevers here says he's legislating morality. He's not supposed to be doing that. It's explicitly listed as one of the things that people should not be doing. And he's just like taking pride in it. He is contradicting and fighting the values that the founding fathers fought for.
Conversation because I was out legislating morality.
Everybody's laughing. No, it's not a joke. He's serious. That's why they're all clapping now. Jesus, dude.
And about time.
That'll do.
Speaking of no-fault divorce.
Hey.
Yeah. I'm not going to make any further comment on that issue. I'd rather talk about abolishing pornography or abolishing abortion, not smashing it.
My God, dude, that's psychotic.
Or no-fault divorce.
Oh, Dusty!
Come on!
All right, we'll have to have a sidebar because he gets a chance to. Yeah, he gets a chance to respond.
You have to smash it in the mouth.
Smashing pornography in the mouth. Was that a porn joke? I'm not sure I fully understand.
Oh, yeah.
But
you guys
go ahead.
You guys get to take that.
Dusty
topic.
said, "Look at me.
Okay.
This
All
is
right.
my panel now. Look at me."
I'm the captain now. I'm the senator now.
This is painful and embarrassing. These people are embarrassing themselves right now. They are very obviously nervous at the very least. It seems like they're not experienced speaking in front of a crowd, but they're pastors. And Dusty Deevers, he seems to be the most comfortable. Some of the things that he said were really good and smooth and charismatic. So
Next topic is going to Indy this summer to disrupt the SBC. Amen? Who's coming with me?
All right. So these are my thoughts. So everything that was said thus far, I agree with. These are my thoughts specifically on, since that clip is in view, and it should be, like,
the SBC, disrupt the SBC. Was he talking about the Southern Baptist Convention? So I'm just thinking about that. He wants to disrupt the Southern Baptist Convention to force religion to conform to his expectations and will. Okay. Well, whatever, as long as it's not government. Quick interjection, this won't take long, I promise. I just want to say I'd appreciate it if you check my Patreon. owenmorgan.com/Patreon to find it. YouTube's algorithm goes up and down, so I can never predict where it's going to be. Having patrons gives me some level of stability. Okay, back to the video. Unfortunately, it is.
specifically on, since that clip is in view, and it should be, like, we don't have to dance around it and be coy. I didn't have any problem either with what was said in the clip, so I agree with you, Doug. For me, as I thought about it, it was the context of the hour-long panel that happened with founders, and Tom Askell is incredible and deserves all our respect and all our honor and the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, they're talking about a clip that I haven't seen, and apparently neither is Dusty Deevers. I have no idea what they're going on about.
Hour-long panel, that context didn't quite fit it for me. It didn't fix it for me because that's part of the context. But then the larger context is not the hour, but for me, it's the last 9 months And so I'll just, I'll be frank, but also careful and charitable. There are
He's going to be careful and charitable. Go on.
other statements that I'm going to hear that portion, that clip, but I'm going to hear it in light of other things that have been said. And I think part of the challenge, it's kind of gets to my talk earlier this afternoon, is obedience in theory. I think that's one of my big concerns. I'm concerned about
What the hell is he going on about, right? Obedience in theory? What?
pietism. I'm concerned about theoretical obedience. So, one of the statements that has been made is that, godly motherhood, for instance, is not the highest calling of a Christian woman, but rather the highest calling of a Christian woman, the woman portion is irrelevant, whether it be Christian woman or Christian man or child or adult. The highest calling of all Christians is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Okay.
And my immediate response is, how? I feel like we have to, yes, of course, a million times, a million amens. Glorify God and enjoy Him forever. But if it's merely theory, then obedience becomes androgynous,
And obedience becomes androgynous. That is an absolutely wild thing to say. I don't even know how to unpack that. Obedience becomes androgynous. Obedience becomes like, it's impossible to tell if obedience is male or female. Like, what? What does that mean? Just for the record, I don't like comparing people to Hitler. That's a completely unfair comparison. But Hitler did write a list of propaganda methods that he intended to use once he got out of prison for high treason back in 1923 or whatever. And in that list, he wrote, propaganda must be distilled into a few small slogans and repeated until every idiot has heard and understood the basic point. Basically. I mean, it was translated from German, but that's effectively the point. Propaganda should always be based on emotion, not reason, because most people are feminine. Women think with emotions rather than logic. And the underlying point is, if men are thinking with emotion rather than logic, which they almost always do, then they're also feminine. When I read that, I was like, is Hitler applying gender to logic? What? How does that work? What's he talking about? Logic and emotion are feminine. That's what I feel like I just listened to with this guy.
But if it's merely theory, then obedience becomes androgynous, becomes generic.
What the hell does that mean, androgynous? That means without gender, basically, right? Am I the idiot? Am I missing something?
It becomes theoretical. The favorite egalitarian verse that's always used.
Egalitarians are people who believe that everybody is equal, by the way. Everybody should strive to be an egalitarian. He's taken a shot across the bow for egalitarianism.
The favorite egalitarian verse that's always used is, Ephesians 5, when you look at the headline, and then you get into Paul's case studies. But the headline principle is mutual submission to one another out of reverence for Christ. But then Paul doesn't just leave it in the abstract. He then begins to say, and this is what that mutual submission for one another as the body of Christ, out of reverence for Christ, looks like based off of God's sovereignly appointed station for that individual in their life.
So people use a Bible verse to justify egalitarianism, viewing everybody as equals in the eyes of the Lord. But he's saying that that's not right. That's not a fair interpretation, that people are not equal in the eyes of the Lord, and you're misinterpreting it. Fascinating.
The egalitarian wants to have the verse about mutual submission in Ephesians 5 override what Paul later says about husbands and wives particularly, that the husband is called to love his wife and lead his wife, and the wife is called to submit. But if you use that hermeneutic and you were consistent with it, you'd have to also...
Hermeneutic? I've never heard that word. Friedrich Schleiermacher, I think. Friedrich Schleiermacher, Wilhelm Dithy. Wow, dude, how long is this guy's name? Seriously, I'm just reading a name right now. Friedrich Schleiermacher, Wilhelm Dithy, Hans George Gadamer, Paul Ricoeur, hermeneutics. That's the guy's name, apparently. Hermeneutics is a theory and methodology of interpretation, especially in the interpretation of biblical texts. Oh, okay. That's news to me. I'd never heard that word. Interesting. Oh, I can use this actually every time Greg Locke says, it's not up to you to interpret the text. Anyway, By the way, this is the first point that this game really differs from the original Fire Red and Leaf Green. I can take both fossils. Anyway.
And the wife is called to submit. But if you use that hermeneutic and you were consistent with it, you'd have to also apply that to parents and children. So
why didn't he just say that interpretation? And by the way, parents and children are equal in the eyes of God. They are equals. Do they have different roles? They might. Parents and children, yes. Parents are supposed to train up a child and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't mean that they're worth less in the eyes of God. Or that's what he's saying. He's saying that women are worth less than men. They are not equals. This is heresy, isn't it? And not that I care. I mean, I'm not a Christian anyway. But this sounds like heresy to me.
you'd have to say to the parents, that they go and tell their 3-year-old, hey, you need to do this. And the 3-year-old says, no. And the parent, of course, needs to mutually submit to that 3-year-old. And right?
Okay, that is not a biblical act. That is the Bible says you should train up a child, but there's some room for movement on how to do that. There are some expectations in the Old Testament. I don't know why we'd be following that when Jesus came back and fulfilled it, but I guess you could say that there are some expectations. Children should not be angry or speak negatively of their parents or whatever, right? It doesn't say anything about children being worth less in the eyes of God than their parents. Also, there are a couple of verses in the New Testament. I think 1 Corinthians and 1 Timothy maybe. 2:12, 1 Timothy 2:12. Is that it? Yeah. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She must be silent. That's fake. That was added after the fact. It was not written by Paul, by whom it's purported to be written. It was not written by him. It was added by monks later who didn't like the fact that women were considered equals to men and wanted to prevent women from getting involved. Jesus included women in his ministry. How can they justify this? This is just wild to me.
No. And the parent, of course, needs to mutually submit to that 3-year-old. And right? Let's be consistent, right? If it's mutual submission as the principle, but there's a practical, visible expression, and that varies with particularity based off of station of life. And gender comes into the picture, man or woman, or single or married, parent or child. And so what I'm concerned about is biblical womanhood is not synonymous.
Biblical womanhood. He actually said that. Biblical womanhood.
Biblical womanhood is not synonymous or somehow exhaustively described by sourdough and sundresses. Sure.
Okay. So he's saying that there's more to being a woman than just the dresses and the sourdough. Yes, of course. I mean, these people, we all knew that these people expected women to birth children and train up the children and all the, a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a lot involved in expectations from these people on women's part. Be meek and submissive and so on and so forth. What point is he getting at here?
Exhaustively described by sourdough and sundresses. Sure. But then I would love to have a follow-up of, if not, then what? And I want the what not just to describe matters of the heart. I want the what.
Dude, this guy feels like he's so full of himself. This is driving me insane.
At some point to also embrace matters of practice. There's a guy, you might have heard of him, but he once said, theology comes out of our fingertips. I thought it was really good.
I've never heard that before. Comes out of our fingertips. What does that mean? Is that just nonsense? Wow. Blog and Mayblog is apparently Doug Wilson's blog. The guy on the right here, I just discovered it. Blog and Mayblog. I like that. That's clever. That's really funny. That doesn't sound familiar to me.
And that's for all of us, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. Theology in practice, theology applied, and so I do believe that the practical obedience of a woman, particularly a married woman who is a mother, is she's a lady of the hearth, as Brian said. I think that's a great way. She is home oriented. She is It's a domestic, feminine beauty. She's not a slay queen. She's not a boss babe. She's not.
What the hell?
She's not fierce. Like, you got to do something.
Wait, what's he talking about right now? Nobody ever said that.
With 1 Peter 3, and a quiet and gentle spirit is the way that this inner beauty that's imperishable of the heart is defined. And does quiet and gentle mean you must make sourdough? Of course not. But
Gotta
if
be
not,
good
then
sourdough.
what? Good sourdough. Right. So I just want to hear.
Wow, that is just that's about as cringy as it gets.
Okay, so because every woman's going to look different. Some women are going to be incredibly domestic and feminine, but they're going to be like, sourdough's gross. We just don't like it. And they make something else that's really awesome. But
Yeah, no one said women are supposed to make sourdough, and that's like an expectation. Who are they arguing against right now?
what is it? That's my thoughts.
Let me say something.
They're complete garbage bullshit thoughts. I am less intelligent now for having heard them.
Towards that. Jared Moore, who is running for SBC president. I'm dropping the SBC.
I think that's Southern Baptist Convention. I could be wrong.
This guy is shameless. This is a politician.
I'm hoping that somebody's recording these things to send to William Wolf.
Oh, God, William Wolf. I have clips of this guy.
But Jared Moore, who's running for SBC president, and his
By the way, William Wolf was involved in Trump's administration, pretty high up. And he's an advocate and an ally of these people. He's one of these people.
William Wolf. But Jared Moore, who's running for SBC president, in his book, Lust of the Flesh, he talks about that holiness. So if you tell a man who's been, same-sex attracted.
You mean gay? You just said gay.
The point for him to overcome is not just holiness, pursue holiness. It's pursue holiness that particularly looks like heterosexual marriage, true marriage. That's what you're to pursue. That's what it is to glorify God in.
What? What the hell is he talking about? I'm so lost.
In your sexuality in your life, not just to stop doing something, but to put on Christ in these areas. So I think that's what you're getting at. On the ground, it's don't just put off certain sins, don't just mortify certain things, but vivify, come to life, and put on Christ in these ways. And whenever you think about men's and women's roles,
Put on Christ. Maybe buy him a drink first.
be zealous for these good works that were prepared for you before the foundation of the world. Pretty straightforward.
And one of the things I think that's comes into the context of a lot of these conversations is we're trying to land principles that are timeless in actual practical situations.
But there are no principles that are timeless. Principles and values and ideals and morals, they change over time and throughout cultures. You know what? I guess you could say that do not murder is one of the oldest and most timeless principles or values or moral positions. But aside from very basic stuff, there are no universal or timeless morals. Like lots of cultures accept gay people, and cultures in the past have too. Lots of them. Like even that's not timeless. What's he talking about?
That are timeless in actual practical situations in a world that is wildly disobedient to these principles.
What the hell does this sentence mean anything to anybody? What is he even saying?
Actual practical situations in a world that is wildly disobedient to these principles. So there's going to be some sparks. But one of the things that I think conservatives in particular have done just profoundly poorly is that often one of the things we do is to put our message forward, we say, well, how's the world marketing things? Well, they're getting a pretty lady to be their spokesman for their thing, getting a news lady, or they're getting a politics lady, or they're getting and then they're going to send that lady out to do cultural battle. And it smacks of marketing to me quite often. And
so if there's a woman who is advocating for the red pill movement, what they're a part of, then it's just marketing. No woman actually agrees with this. Is that what he's saying?
the way that we're going to do it is by basically giving away a lot of our principles right at the beginning. Because Paul really does say in Titus that if this doesn't happen, and he's talking about older women discipling younger women to be workers at home, that the word of God will be reviled.
So if women don't act submissive to men, then the word of God will be reviled?
There's going to be a lot of sparks when that principle heads into a culture like ours, I think. But I think we are right to be skeptical when we see that nature is commonly counter-signaled, or anytime you make an argument from nature and say the nature of the woman is this, and it lends itself, it's not arbitrary. God made the woman this way for this vocation, and God made the man this way for this vocation. Often the instinct I think you're pointing to, Joel, is that we want to immediately soften that back to a spiritual thing that has no teeth in the real world and say,
soften it back.
Well, don't you know that it's about godliness, not strength, men? And you'd say, well, no, just because the manosphere uses strength to pick up 20 women per month at a bar, strength isn't the problem. Their weakness is the problem, that they have
men's weakness?
No strength and self-control over their flesh. So I do think that that's part of this.
Oh, I see. Manosphere, like pickup artists. What are you talking about? Pickup artists' weakness is the problem. Oh, okay.
Conversation is a lot of people miss. We want to boil it down to propositions in abstract, but we really are looking at a situation in the world where conservatism for too long has just been leftism with a different flavor, like cherry leftism and grape left.
Conservatism is cherry leftism.
Leftism. Instead,
slow leftism.
Slow leftism. And so when you say something like, man, I really don't want to make a state of affairs where conservatives begin to prop up and we say, well, for political commentary, we're going to have our lady guy or our lady, and then we're going to have our guy. And then for theology, we're going to have...
Hell, just bring the lady guy in. That sounds good.
And our lady guy.
And our lady guy.
But enough about Russell Moore.
Yeah. But that's going to be pretty controversial in the world today because, I mean, now you're talking about something that's about, a couple country miles away from where the culture is.
I agree with all of that. And we shouldn't...
Once it get really, you agree with all of it? Knock me over with a feather.
We shouldn't be, for PR reasons, sending our women out to do the fighting for us.
We shouldn't, for PR reasons, we shouldn't send women out fighting for us? Okay.
You're a woman.
So this is his argument against the trad wife movement. Women who are arguing in favor of the traditionalist, bake sourdough bread and wear dresses and have babies lifestyle, if you will. You shouldn't have women out there as the face of your movement. That's bad. Because men should be the face. Okay, interesting.
You're a woman. You can talk about abortion and we can't.
That's not what he was saying. He was saying women can't talk about something because they're not supposed to be a face of a movement. Aside from that, I don't believe that opinions should be closed off to anybody. Everyone should be able to have an opinion on any subject. I can talk about abortion, though I'm not a woman. I can talk about anything, absolutely anything, though I'm not that thing. I can talk about gay rights, though I'm not gay. There's a subset of the population, the culture, that thinks that you shouldn't talk about it if you're not this thing, and I just disagree with that.
That's ceding the territory to the enemy. So we shouldn't send women out to do fight our battles. At the same time, and I think we have to be careful about us not fighting with the women ourselves, right? So
I don't know what that means.
Is
he saying he doesn't want a woman up there on stage with him because she's inferior and should be submissive?
Us not fighting with the women ourselves, right? So if that's part of the default in the evangelical world, where there are women out there, and women like Allie Beth have done a lot of good and are on our side in the main.
If you don't know who Allie Beth is, she was mentioned earlier. Apparently they saw a clip from her in a previous panel. She's just a right-wing nutcase for all intents and purposes. And a trad wife. She believes in traditional, bake bread and make babies and all that junk for your man.
We should be fighting with them either. If there's a better way, and there is a better way, then I think we should model it and just send them in. Where are the men? Send them in into the fray. And I think a lot of godly women would say, thanks for the reinforcements, and I'm going to go home and make some sourdough.
I feel like none of that made any sense, but okay. Is he nervous? Is that why he's not making any sense?
Any more thoughts, Eric? You didn't talk much. Any other thoughts that you want to add, or anybody else? And if not, I definitely want us to, this is what we said to all of you guys.
He said the quiet part out loud. You're not supposed to say you didn't talk much. You're just supposed to say, Eric, do you have any other thoughts? So he has his opportunity. This guy's bad at hosting panels.
Who came to the conference that we're going to talk about biblical patriarchy, and I think there's some more that we can address. But I also, it was an audible. We just ran an audible, but we have Dusty and we have Doug and we have the Ogden boys. I feel like Christian nationalism is worth a. Right? I mean, why do something as controversial as patriarchy when you could talk about, Christian nationalism? So I think that'd be a worthy endeavor as well. But Eric, you just didn't talk much, so.
Yeah, no, my only other thought is really pastoral. One of the things we talk a lot about in Ogden is kind of this idea that women can't be pastored by men. So
apparently this guy, the two people on the right are from a podcast called The King's Hall. Never heard of that.
In Ogden is kind of this idea that women can't be pastored by men. So sort of to Doug's point, like we need a lady for everything. So this was sort of the problem, I think, with Matt Chandler. What was the
Jen Wilkins?
Jen Wilkins,
yeah.
Right? You need a woman pastor for women.
Right.
So I think just practically, one of the ways that you solve this long term is actually by men pastoring, all the people in their congregation.
So no woman pastors.
And so then they're used to that. I think what is challenging, to Doug's point, is you do have women who have essentially stepped on the agon. They've gone out into the arena and
Stepped on what?
stepped into the agon. So the arena, they're
Never heard the word. This sounds like an inside joke between him and someone else.
going out in a place where fundamentally they're being like a man, but then they're also pulling the rug out and they're saying, but you have to treat me like a lady too.
Who is affected by this fictitious problem that he just presented? And how are they affected negatively? What is he talking about?
And so I think that's why it's sort of an unwinnable position. Now, to Doug's point, I've actually wrestled with it. Like, what do you do in that scenario? Because a lot of times you've got, like, Allie Bass, she's teaching on complementarianism and patriarchy. And
Complementarianism, I checked in the other one. It's the idea that men and women are fulfilling different roles. They complement each other. They have different positions in God's structure or whatever. And that's kind of what they've been talking about this whole time. In reality, they already said earlier that women are inferior to men.
And making quite a mess of it in many points.
Sorry, step back.
And patriarchy. Sometimes you've got, like, Allie Bass, she's teaching on complementarianism and patriarchy and making quite a mess of it in many points. And then we have to pastorally deal.
Typical woman making quite a mess of everything, and they have to pastor and come in and fix everything that she f***ed up. So yeah, I guess that's what he's saying, right? He's unhappy about the fact that a woman is teaching because that's throwing a wrench into everything.
Deal with that because your women are listening to it. Yeah, and so then you have to respond to it, and you're like, well, I genuinely don't want to get into it with this lady. She's in a role she shouldn't be in. That would be my take in terms of particularly teaching theology in that section.
Notice how nobody argued that women should be in a role or should be in a pastor's role on this panel anyway. Nobody argued that women should have a leadership role. He's speaking to a group of people that are this message is just completely lost on. I guess that's the point of a panel,
But you get into that and then you say, what do I do pastorally? Because, it's the old, you don't hit a girl, but what happens when she comes in swinging?
That was an extremely strange example. Okay.
With a knife, yes.
With a knife. It's not enough. You had to up the example a little bit more. She didn't just come in swinging. She came in swinging with a knife. Okay. Yeah, if somebody is swinging at you, you have a right to swing back, in my opinion. That's how I've always viewed it. And that, it's just what it is. I don't know. I could be talked out of it, but I think that self-defense is the one exception to violence. A complete pacifist except for cases of self-defense. So,
Good point. Good point.
no, it wasn't. It meant nothing.
There was one other thing I wanted to say.
A woman could beat the stuffing out of you all. That's good. I like that. Beat the stuffing out of them. Yeah. Oh, certainly. Absolutely. There are plenty of women who could beat the stuffing out of these people. And I'd be willing to bet that these people don't do any, what would you call, like, they don't do any weightlifting or boxing or any kind of things that they view as manly. They don't do any exercises that are, that will pump up muscles. These people don't look muscly at all. They just look like normal people at best. Doug Wilson in the middle is like definitely not the pinnacle of manhood. But okay.
I can
Go ahead. Yeah, filibuster.
I can summarize Christian nationalism
Filibuster. Okay.
in a way that will cause all Christians everywhere to agree.
Oh, by mimicking the woman,
No,
the leftist woman who said they believe that rights come from God?
No, well, I think all Christians should be able to agree on this. America should stop making God angry.
All Christians should agree on this. Americans should stop making God angry. No, not all Christians should view it that way. You know how all Christians should view it? All Christians should stop making God angry, not all Americans. Why is he shoehorning Americans into the equation? Let me say it a different way. All Muslims in America should stop making should stop making Jesus angry. That's another way of phrasing what he just said. I completely disagree. Where are we now? How did we get to where we are when we're listening to this dude say this batty shit? Oh, nobody claps. He's like waiting for the clap.
Who's going to rise up and say, no, it's okay for America to continue to make God,
It's okay for Americans to make decisions for their own lives. That's called liberty, baby. That's what America is all about, or that's what it's supposed to be about. These people are trying to reverse that, I guess.
60 million
Sorry, step back.
for America to continue to make God, does 60 million unborn children slaughtered not make him angry? Does it?
Oh my God. No, it doesn't. You know why I say that? Because the Bible is positive about abortion. It's favorable about it. It says you should get an abortion. Numbers 5:11-23. You should get an abortion in certain cases. Your wife cheated on you is the one given there. That example in those verses. Test for an unfaithful wife. God doesn't care about abortion. In fact, if anything, he's positive about it. Now, regarding 60 million abortions, I don't know that number is even correct. I have strong doubts about that. But either way, it's a decision that people are making for themselves that doesn't affect anybody else. It affects a clump of cells that would, in effect, act in a parasitic way and take your nutrients and blood against your will. Now, if you want that to happen, that's fine, but you should be allowed to make that choice for yourself, right? If you get in a car accident, you end up in the hospital, and you wake up and you find yourself giving a blood transfusion to some random person in the bed next to you, and you say, are you just like taking my blood? They say yes. You have the complete right, moral and legal, to stand up and walk out, even if that person's gonna die because you take the needle out of your arm. Even if they're gonna die, that's your right, and you will not and should not get in any trouble for that. That's effectively what a pregnancy is doing. It's draining nutrients and blood and energy from the mother or the possible mother, whatever. So I simply reject this. The woman is making a decision for herself, and she has a complete and total right to do that. She should. This wasn't even like a religious issue until, 50 years ago. In the 70s and 80s, it really started ramping up. There were some religious groups that believed it before that. Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. But it really ramped up heavily and became a politicized religious issue with Jerry Falwell Sr. in the 80s, I think. That dude did a number on society, straight up. Anyway, Kanye West likes to say that, there's a genocide happening, 50 million black babies. Obviously not correct. But even if that was an an accurate number. It's not a correct representation of the facts. It's not a genocide because these people are making decisions for themselves. It's a choice that you make. A genocide is when somebody is making a decision for somebody else to erase their culture or erase their identities or their humanity or their, existence in one way or another.
Bergefell not make him angry? Does the scourge of porn does that not make him angry?
I don't know. He would be angry if Christians were doing these things, I guess. I mean, you could make an argument for that. I don't think that he would be, but you could make that argument. You can't make the argument that all of America are pissing off God. This argument comes from Jerry Falwell Sr., as a matter of fact. Well, it probably doesn't come from him originally, but he has been saying this at least since 9/11. Actually, this is 9/13, 2 days after 9/11.
This is the first time that we've been attacked on our soil. First time, and by far, the worst results.
Okay, I think that the Civil War, was an attack on our soil, but that's neither here nor there.
And I fear, as Donald Rumsfeld...
And you know what? I think the Revolutionary War was on our soil too, wasn't it? If I'm remembering my history correctly. What do you mean this is the first time we've been attacked on our soil?
Here, as Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, said yesterday, that this is only the beginning, and with biological warfare available to these monsters, the Husseins, the Bin Ladens, the Arafats.
This is priming people to be pissed off about Iraq so that they can invade. It's just disgusting looking back at it.
What we saw...
Oh, yeah. Did he forget Pearl Harbor? That's a good point. Thank you for that. What? No, this doesn't... this is complete nonsense. What the hell are you talking about?
What we saw on Tuesday, as terrible as it is, could be minuscule if in fact God continues to lift the curtain and allow the enemies of America.
You ready? Here are the enemies of America. He's about to list them for us.
To give us probably what we deserve.
Oh, we deserve it.
Well, Jerry, that's my feeling. I think we've just seen the antechamber to terror. We haven't even begun to see what they can do to the major population. I mean,
the ACLU.
We haven't begun to see what they can do to a major population. Well, I mean, we watched them run 2 planes into buildings in New York City, so I think we have seen what they can do. But anyway, these people are just jokes. I'm sorry, man. I know it's not even about these people. I'm trying to get to the point here. This just drives me nuts.
The ACLU's got to take a lot of blame for this.
Oh, yeah.
And I know
the American Civil Liberties Union, people that look out for civil liberties, people who have actually sued for Nazis' rights to march, or no, was it the KKK? No, it was Nazis, I think. Sued for Nazis' rights to march through a town and scream all kinds of heinous shit about death to the Jews and stuff. The ACLU fights for civil liberties. Full stop. And he hates them.
Hear from them for this, but throwing God successfully with the help of the federal court system, throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools.
It's just a fabrication.
The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this because God will not be mocked, and when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies.
Wait a minute. So 24 years ago, 24 years before these other guys were talking about this subject, it was 40 million. 24 years later, with a population of 330 million, now it's 60 million? This doesn't sound right. Somebody's lying, right?
We make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the...
Dude, I love this list, dude. Sounds like a gathering that I would like to attend.
Lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them.
People for the American Way, by the way, is Right Wing Watch. It's the parent company.
Who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Well,
Dude literally blamed 9/11 on gay people and abortion and stuff. Anyway, that's the same argument that we're listening to from these other nutter butters of epic proportions. They're repeating the exact same ideas as Jerry Falwell.
The scourge of porn does that not make him angry? Are we not visiting? Are we not inviting him to visit judgment upon us? So I suggest.
Well, look. I just want to address this for a second. That's the thing. He's giving examples for why God would be angry with people. I don't know what God he's worshiping. The God of the Old Testament, I don't know. But the God of the New Testament, Jesus is God, or Jesus himself, if you believe in the Trinity, isn't hateful, vengeful, violent, or angry. Jesus loved everybody, especially the poor. He wanted to take care of everybody. He wanted to do whatever he could to make people's lives better and easier. And that included taking from the rich and giving to the poor, Robin Hood style. So I don't know what this guy's talking about. Like, what is his conceptualization of God that he came to this conclusion?
Visiting, are we not inviting him to visit judgment upon us?
It's like that clip from, I can't even remember the show.
Newhart, stop it.
Yeah, I have two words for you. Now, I find that most people can remember them. Yeah. Okay,
I don't know what he's talking about.
This is one thing with Christian nationalism, just to go. So, and I'm curious to hear Doug's take. I've talked to you guys about it. Dusty, I think I haven't talked to you, but I can assume, but I'd love to hear your take too. I think a lot of guys are like, why do we need the label? We already have one. It's theonomy, or it's this or it's that.
They didn't like that one either.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying the theonomists like it, and so and
what's a theonomist? He keeps using like technical religious words. Theonomy, a hypothetical Christian form of government. Oh my God, dude, in which society is ruled by divine law. Theonomists hold that divine law, particularly the judicial laws of the Old Testament, should be observed by modern societies. Interesting. I had never heard that before. I'm going to write this one down and maybe talk about this. Very interesting. So these guys don't want a theocracy. They want a theonomy. Theocracy would be like with God at the head. But in theonomy's case, it looks like it's a Christian form of government where people are ruled by divine law. Old Testament specifically. Is Israel a theonomy, I wonder? Do they follow? I don't think they have laws set as like the Old Testament laws, right? Oh, interesting. No, they don't. Okay, I was wondering, like, does Israel institute the Mosaic law as their laws? And I guess that they don't. And the reason is because there are Jews of all types of religious views and all forms across a spectrum. Some Jews are Reformed, some are Orthodox, some ultra-Orthodox. Everybody is different, so they're not going to tie you down. You can worship however you want. That's my interpretation of why Israel doesn't have like a Mosaic law built right into their constitution. But hilariously, these people that we're listening to, they do want the Old Testament built into the Constitution, even though they're not Jewish. And Jesus fulfilled the old law, the Old Testament. So it's like irrelevant to them completely. Despite that, they apparently still want the Mosaic law. They want a theonomy. Wild. Serious question. Is Sharia law basically the Muslim counterpart of theonomy? I think you could say that, but Sharia law has a lot more built into it. It was written like 1,000 or 1,500 years after the Mosaic law. So it addressed problems that were more prevalent at that era or in that era than they were in the the Mosaic law. So yeah, I guess you could say it's kind of like a counterpart.
Already have a label.
Oh, and also people are instituting Sharia law all over the world. In Muslim countries and stuff. They're not setting up the Mosaic law. That's, to my knowledge, that's not being set up in any country, the Mosaic law. It'd be impossible to follow. There's so much wild shit in there. Children who are disobedient to their parents should be stoned in front of the town? Like what? Nobody follows the old law. They can't. Pitcher Alex, it's hard to read, sorry. I think Pitcher Alex says people forget Muhammad was a statesman. I'm from a Muslim country with secular law. There you go. Yeah, I think Indonesia has the largest concentration of Muslims in the world, and it is largely secular, right? I could be wrong on that. Someone can correct me. Turkey is technically a secular government, but largely Muslim. I think, what's his name? Is it Erdogan? Yeah. I think Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, is kind of taking steps to reverse that and turn it into a more theonomous government, if you will. But yeah, plenty of governments out there that are, plenty of countries out there that are majority Muslim but have a secular government. Unfortunately, Islam is pushing their belief system on people in a more direct and violent way than Christianity. So, for example, Christians want to push people off of roofs if they're gay, like these people, but they don't, and they can't. Muslims want to push gay people off of roofs, and they do. So some Muslim countries are bad. Islam is bad, but Christianity and Judaism, they're equally as bad in thought, just not as bad in action today, like right now. They've had their time. You just look back to the Crusades, honestly.
I'm saying the theonomists like it, and so like we already have a label. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm not saying this is the definition because that's the trouble with it. Nobody gets to say this is the definition.
Okay.
But one of the things that I've noticed just in talking to guys who are, Christian nationalists, self-defined, or self-labeled, is one thing I've noticed as a distinction is they're very comfortable with the civil magistrate and the nation as a whole stepping in, coming into obedience to Christ with one of two ways. They're open to both ways. The two
Christian nationalists are okay with Christian nationalist states in two ways. Is that what he's saying?
Two ways being this. It could be a mass move of God's Spirit and a revival and just sheer number of regenerate hearts.
It could be people who just want to be Christian. That's possible.
Move of God's Spirit and a revival and just sheer number of regenerate hearts, 50% plus one of the population of these United States that are born again through, gospel preaching. And then
that's not what these people are on stage. They're not born again through gospel preaching. They're extremists who want to impose their beliefs on everybody else, not just their Christian beliefs, but their denominational beliefs, their specific form of Christianity they want to impose on people. Anyway, absolutely psychotic. Okay, go on.
The population of these United States that are born again through, gospel preaching, and then that lends towards Christians who are in public office and begin to legislate righteous laws. And but they also, and I've noticed this as a distinction from some, I can't speak for all theonomists, but some of the
all theonomists, all Christian nationalists, what he means. Some of them what?
Older school theonomists who have been like, that's cute, Christian nationalism, we've been doing this for 40 years. But I've noticed is some of the theonomists are less comfortable where the CN, some of the younger guys are, they're comfortable with bottom up, but also top down. Like they would say something, and I would say this too, but they would say, but like the homo jihad replaced the flag of the United States with.
Did he just say the homo jihad? Wow, dude. Okay, I gotta write this one down. 27. Oh my God, dude. I love it. The homo jihad. Speaking of homos, who's your favorite homo? I like homo heidelbergensis personally. Some people like homo erectus. A lot of people seem to like that one. I asked this question recently. And some people like Elton John. That was a response when I asked that on my community posts. Anyway, okay. Homo jihad. Go on.
But like the homo jihad replaced the flag of the United States with the rainbow in the course of 40 years with less than 3% of the population.
Okay. So he's saying gay people or the LGBT community broadly replaced the American flag with the rainbow flag? Where? When? What are you talking about? You think people are putting rainbow flags up at the White House, like in place of the American flag? You think they're doing the bugle and raising it in military camps every morning? Are you kidding? Some government entities, embassies or whatever, might have a rainbow flag near the American flag or in addition to or whatever, but there will always be an American flag at U.S. embassies and at the White House and on people's stupid cars and on their stupid little jackets and their hats and all that junk. The American flag's not been replaced with a rainbow flag. And also, I love that he's calling gay people jihadists. Of all people, he is the one calling gay people jihadists. I mean, they're not, obviously, but the irony is so thick I can't see through it. This guy is in favor of a jihad for Christianity. That's what they're up here talking about. They're trying to push jihad, a holy war in favor of God. That's not exactly what jihad means, but, that's how it's interpreted. That's how they mean it when they say it. He's pushing for a holy war in favor of God. And he has the twig and berries to say gay people are waging a jihad. Wow.
So why are Christians not allowed to do that again?
I love how he's setting a moral standard, right? He's saying, I don't think that people should do this. Placing the bar here. Gay people are waging jihad against everybody else. I don't want that. And then he says, so I'm going to do that. Wait, what? Is it wrong or not? If it's wrong to do it, then you shouldn't be doing it. What a psychotic thing to say.
That a lot of political change and when we understand that the law is a tutor. So we're not saying that that's going to save anybody, but the law does function as a tutor, and
What the hell does that mean?
in a lawful country, there is more of an awareness, the first use of the law, more of an awareness of, oh, I'm a sinner, I need a savior. And it works as that black velvet backdrop for the brilliance of the diamond for those gospel preachers now to preach a gospel that maybe falls on less deaf ears. And so I feel like, yeah, Lord, I'm gonna pray for revival, but I'm also gonna work towards if we don't have the numbers, that we still that we could have a few high caliber men called by God that would work into positions of civil leadership and do what's right, even if we're the minority. And maybe that shapes it. Could be power from a minority that paves the way for gospel preaching and revival, or it could be revival. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this is very true.
Wait, is he calling men a minority? Is he referring to men as a minority group? That's interesting. I mean, minority, as it's used in legal definitions or when it's used in like a political context, doesn't mean it's a group that is smaller than the overall demographic. Like if there are 48% men and 52% women, that doesn't mean that men are the minority group. There are fewer rich people in society than there are, everybody else. But so they're a minority group in the strictest sense of the word, but they're not a minority, as in they're not like oppressed by an upper class. They're not treated as second-class citizens, for lack of a better term. Is he saying men are a minority? They're not. Men are the majority group, the ones in power and control in the country.
It could be power from a minority that paves the way for gospel preaching and revival, or it could be revival. What do you guys think?
This is very true. If we got a King Josiah, I would take it. He would. You can.
A King Josiah, wasn't he like a terrible dictator? What was King Josiah? Okay, let's just look. King Josiah's story for kids. Should keep it nice and simple for us. Okay, there's a minute and 37-second YouTube video, Gospel for Kids. Let's watch it.
Josiah was 8 years old when he was made king of Judah. He was a good king who loved the Lord. He wanted to help his people, the Israelites, obey the Lord and stop worshiping idols. When he was older, he and his people started to repair the temple and make it beautiful again. While the people were working on the temple, Hilkiah the high priest found the book of the law, a scroll that contained the scriptures. A servant read the book to Josiah. Josiah heard the words and was sad because his people did not obey the Lord.
Okay, so I guess Doug Wilson is saying that we want a figure who is disheartened and disturbed by the fact that people don't follow the law. All right, go on.
He tore his clothes to show he was sad. He told Hilkiah to ask the Lord what they should do. Hilkiah and the king's servants visited Huldah. She was a prophetess, a faithful leader who was inspired by God. She said the Lord was happy with Josiah because he was helping the people obey. The Lord promised that King Josiah would live in peace. King Josiah wanted his people to keep their promises to the Lord. He asked them to celebrate the Passover to help them remember how the Lord freed the Israelites long ago in Egypt.
Okay, so is it fair to say that he's like a dictator, or that he kind of took over?
Servants visited Huldah. She was a prophetess, a faithful leader who was inspired by God. She said, "The Lord was happy with Josiah because he was helping the people obey. The Lord promised that King Josiah would live in peace."
Yeah, so it sounds like he's forcing people.
And do an awful lot of good top down. So I would thank God. I would rejoice in it. I would pray for him. I would also be aware that after King Josiah died, the people went back very quickly to the old ways. So it's got to be, I think it has to be both. You have to have leadership, genuine leadership. A godly prince, godly president, godly legislators are used by God to do good. But the people have got to respond in true faith. There's got to be a genuine thing there. And so I would like to see it meet in the middle.
Meet in the middle. Okay, interesting. So he's saying you can force people to pretend to be Christian, but you can't force them to believe in the Bible or to believe in this stuff. You can impose your moral positions on people, but you can't force them to believe. That comes later. Am I reading this correctly?
We've been praying for Josiah, and it looks like in this next election we might get a Jehu.
God, I hate these religious comparisons. Just give me more direct explanations, please.
But I'll take the Jehu.
Dusty, any thoughts?
What did Jehu do now? Is that Trump? Is he comparing Jehu to Trump? Jehu, with a chosen band, Jehu planned his conspiracy against the king Jehoram and secretly entered Jezreel. Jehoram tried to flee, but Jehu shot an arrow that pierced his heart. Jehu later threw his body on Naboth's vineyard to avenge Naboth, who Jehoram's father and mother had murdered. Okay, I don't understand how that applies to anything. Functioned as a commander in the army of Ahab? Okay. I'm assuming he's talking about Trump. Anyway, that's what I've got for you today. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. This is absolutely psychotic.